The practices of big tech are pretty out of control, both, with the censorship, with the surveillance. The studies show that when you ban people, they just go and become more radical and in some cases become violent. It's very easy to say, oh, I have nothing to hide, so I don't care about surveillance. If you didn't have anything to hide, you'd just walk around naked. If you're going to put software and hardware into your own, physical body, you probably want to make sure that your brain can't get hacked. But what we're actually concerned about in the privacy movement is, what are the people with this data? How are they going to misuse the data?
First of all, this is my voice. I'm Tim Green and I have ALS. This podcast is not about ALS or living with disabilities. I don't want you to feel sorry for me. I don't feel sorry for me. I am a father of 5 with a marriage that's lasted for over 33 years. I am a #1 New York Times best-selling author of 41 books, an NFL first-round pick with an 8-year career. I worked on TV for Fox Sports, Good Morning America, Court TV, and Extra. I've hosted BattleBots, A Current Affair, and Find My Family. And I am also a practicing attorney. In this podcast, we're diving into real-life stories. From triumphs to trials, we'll explore the extraordinary in the ordinary. Join me, Tim Green, and my son Troy each week for real conversations, laughter, and insights. Because life is a journey, and everyone's got a story. My voice in today's episode is powered by 11 Labs. Bill Ottman, thank you for joining us today. For our audience who may not be as familiar with tech or decentralized platforms, can you give us a simple, clear explanation of what Minds is and how it works?
For sure. Yeah, thanks for having me, Tim and Troy. I'm really excited for this. Decentralized social media is essentially where you own your identity, your content, your data, and you can take it with you where you want. You're not locked in to any specific platform. So Minds is a social media app that feels very similar to, X, for instance, but Minds can actually talk to other separate networks. For instance, Mastodon is another client of ActivityPub, which is a protocol that we both are integrated with so that people on Minds can talk to people over on Mastodon, which is a completely different app, completely different infrastructure. But when you make a post, I can reply to someone on a completely different network. And we're also integrated with Noster, which is more of a cryptographic based protocol that is different from ActivityPub, where you have your private and public keys, and those are your identity essentially. And so there's a handful of different protocols that are approaching decentralization and sovereign identity a little bit differently. And so Minds integrates a few of those, as well as blockchain and Ethereum and Bitcoin. And we're really trying to kind of be a hub for communicating in this way so that you can own your stuff more.
We recently had on Frank McCourt with Project Liberty. You ever seen his stuff?
Is he an author?
I think there is a Frank McCourt as an author, but he owned. It's another Frank McCourt. I'll have to connect you guys, but his is all about his whole thing is basically on the internet right now. Your information is bought and sold, and you get nothing. It's all about. It sounds like a similar kind of
for
similar
sure
passion.
So we believe that excessive surveillance is ridiculous. The practices of big tech are pretty out of control, both, with the censorship, with the surveillance, with demonetization, deplatforming. And, we've done a lot of research into the effects of censorship. We actually wrote a whole paper on all the kind of peer-reviewed research around what censorship actually does. A lot of the big tech platforms try to say, oh, we're creating a safer network by censoring. But actually, if you look into the research, it proves pretty across the board that you're radicalizing people more deeply when you ban them, because it actually reinforces their beliefs, and so it makes them feel that they're even correct in these opinions, and they just go to another network and do the same thing there. So censorship is actually super damaging for the internet. And, it's obviously tricky. You want people to have control over the content that they're consuming. You don't want people to have to see stuff that they don't want to see. But yeah, it's a crazy situation. And now we have X, who is sort of being more free speech friendly, and moving, in the right direction in that sense. But they're also very have been against interoperability with decentralized protocols, which is odd, but because Elon knows that this is my speculation, but I think that Elon knows that if he opens it up so the data can, kind of flow, it's going to lose their edge with AI, and so it's very complicated, and there's a lot of competitive nuances of the conversation.
Yeah, even the censorship is so difficult, right? Because it's how do you decide on minds what to show and not to show? And
we just stick to the First Amendment. I mean, my philosophy is that there's no way that our lawyers and our team is gonna think of something smarter than that for creating a healthy society. The First Amendment's pretty battle tested over the last couple hundred years,
yeah,
and we have really good filters so that people are only seeing what they want to see. But to me, I would rather once in a while see something that I don't like, as opposed to be in an environment where it's overly censorious.
yeah, yeah. I think that's the challenge. Those people now, social media was like total free speech, and then I think it got very censored, especially the last 4 years. And now I think it's starting to open up again, and it's I don't know, painful for some people.
It is. Well, we saw what happened with Ye
Yeah,
recently.
right.
I mean, that was just wild. But
Yeah, and then
go ahead.
no, I was going to say, and then like, where do you go from there? Because now, and it's obviously moronic postings or humor. I don't know if it's humor or he's having a mental
He's
breakdown or what it
trolling.
is.
It's both. It's all of the above. And I
Yeah,
think that, look, that is how a healthy, free society functions. There's crazy people. You walk down a city street and there's a person on the street corner, uh, saying racist stuff or crazy stuff. Like that's just how. I like that exists. You just keep walking. You don't have to sit there and listen to him. You can
mm-hmm.
block Kanye, um, and yeah, some people think that it's damaging, but I think that you have to do the cost benefit, and it's much more damaging to ban it, in my opinion. I know that people have these rationalizations and say that, oh, he's infecting other people's minds, and it's just I still feel like it's more damaging to censor lawful speech.
Yeah, I think the light too, like bringing light to it and seeing it's there probably is some influence, especially somebody of his, like how many followers and all that and influence. There probably is some people that are going to listen to it or read it and say, "Oh, maybe I should look into this. Maybe he is right," which is a little damaging, but it's also good to shine light on that. That does exist. Just because you ban on social media, it doesn't mean it goes away. And like you said, it's like you get to know who the people are in the street corner. If you had somebody with a mask on screaming things at you and you didn't know who it was, right? Or you didn't let them say it in public, but they're saying it in private. It kind of shines light on it. Let's see exactly who people are. Yeah, I agree with you.
Absolutely. Like it lets you know who the idiots are, and that's valuable. It's like these. We need to be teaching, the younger generation about critical thinking, like not assuming that if we hide these things from them, that it's going to work. It never worked. I remember being on the internet as a kid, as I'm sure you do. You just naturally want to go find the craziest stuff on the internet. That is what young people do. And, yes, you have to put guardrails in place to a degree. You don't want kids, seeing crazy pornography and but they're going to look, they're going to find it, and you have to teach them the skills to not want to go there. If it's just basic psychology, like, kids do the opposite always. When I'm putting on my son's pants in the morning, he's 2. I will try to put on the pants, and he will do everything he can to get away from me. And I use basic reverse psychology on him, and I will say, nope, you cannot have your pants. And then he immediately wants me to put the pants on. It's insane. It's just like, I feel almost bad doing it, but it's that's just how it works.
I do the same thing with my crew, but when I was younger and like first getting onto the internet, there was like LimeWire and stuff like that. And if you went on the wrong, like there was the amount of like viruses and stuff that were on the internet, it was like 50% of the websites, I feel like. So you couldn't go that crazy because your whole computer would get shut down. Now,
right.
Now they block it out. But
yeah, torrents were pretty wild. I mean, this BitTorrent is a very revolutionary system. But yeah, that's the risk of it. It's like, you're just downloading all these crazy files from other people's computers, and it's there's a lot of risk to it. But that system was one of the original decentralized protocols for, very, very similar to decentralized social media.
How is Minds different from traditional social media platforms like Facebook, Instagram, and X/Twitter?
Yeah, so, we have a free speech policy, but we also have really, pretty sophisticated tools for, having a safe mode. So, we actually care about free speech and privacy and open source. We're all of our software is open source, so anybody can inspect the algorithms. They can help contribute to the code. They can make sure that we're not abusing them. Facebook is proprietary. They don't share any of their source code. And then those decentralized protocols so that we're not locking people in. And, it's pretty frustrating. I don't know if you saw like Zuckerberg on Rogan recently.
Yeah.
He's trying to play this game where he's acting like suddenly he cares about free speech and open source because, okay, they are doing open source AI in a sense, and they're rolling back some of their prior policies, but it's just, and they brought Dana White onto their board, and that's good. Like, I like to see them moving in that direction, but the fact that he's actually claiming to, care about these things now, and he's tricking a lot of people with his whole marketing kind of PR reversal, like growing his hair out, wearing chains, acting like a thug, doing MMA.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very clever. And to give him the benefit of the doubt, he probably is evolving, but he's still not walking the walk. And his implementation, like, for instance, Threads, which is like sort of Facebook's alternative to Twitter, integrated with Instagram. Threads was actually forced by the European Union to integrate ActivityPub for decentralized communication because, the EU wasn't going to let them in unless they had interoperability. So that was interesting. So actually, I'm following Obama and other people on Minds from Threads, and I can like reply to Obama. But the way they implemented it was that they don't ingest anything from Minds or other ActivityPub networks. They only push out. And so it's like everything they do is half-ass. It's fluff. And, with the open source AI, it's like, okay, good, open source AI, but the models themselves are like censored into oblivion. And, so it's just like everything is half-hearted and just not done in a principled way.
Do you think they have to do that with the size and the scale they're at? Like, do you think it's too hard for them to? Could they change and become more like Minds, or would that be just too big of a lift, or they lose all their profitability?
I think there's definitely, look at X. I mean, X is, I think they're pretty close to our policy. And I mean, I think that again, it's all about user control, and parents should have control over, what their kids are being able to access. But I think that X is proving that you can have the full spectrum of content. I mean, X even allows porn, as Kanye showed us. And I'm not pro porn, but I believe it is legal. Like the People versus Larry Flint, like that Supreme Court precedent is very important. And so whether you like it or not, that's how a free society functions. You don't have to want to look at it, but I think that it's very bold for Elon and X to be, pushing things as far as they are. And so I think that they really do prove that Facebook and Google could have similar types of policies. And X has its own issues. There is still some censorship there, but it's like way better than Facebook.
Do you like the community notes that X
Oh
has?
yeah.
And yeah,
Yeah, what do you how do you feel about it?
I don't really, I don't fully understand like what's behind it. I like the idea of it. That I think the idea. Well, I don't know this stuff nearly as well as you, but the layman's understanding is that they have people that are both right, left, and center in a room that kind of have to agree on things that are going viral if they're going to put the community note, and it's just supposed to be whatever fact based only versus before on Facebook and Instagram and the old, it was Twitter before X. Everything was very censored and left leaning.
Yeah,
But
exactly. I mean, it's certainly a better, more fair, and I would say accurate system. It's not perfect, but yeah, it's essentially crowdsourced fact checking, and users have to kind of earn the ability to participate and so like it was originally called Birdwatch on Twitter, and then X rebranded it as Community Notes, and they actually did, to their credit, open source the algorithm behind it for how they determine who can do what and which notes are like get elevated to like be tagged and flagged under posts. And it's a really good system. I think it's probably the best one out there. I wish that they would actually open source everything. Elon said he was going to open source everything, and then he just didn't. And he open sourced some of Grok. He open sourced some of Community Notes, but he didn't open source the whole platform. And he's doing that because he is there's this myth that you're maintaining this competitive edge by being secretive with all of that, but that's not accounting for the fact that if they did open source, they could even do a protective license so that like people can't just steal it and like commercialize it. They could do a non-commercial open source. And then they would get all, thousands of developers around the world contributing, making the code better, making new features, creating network effects. Like look at Bitcoin, look at even WordPress, or like open source is eating the internet, and it's just going to keep moving in that direction. And Bitcoin is like the best example because it's this open source decentralized protocol, which in a decade has become a top 10 asset on the planet. And it's just unleashed. No one controls it. It's like, it's so beautiful what Bitcoin has achieved. And they did it because they just let go. And it it's just like this living, breathing force. So it's incredible to watch. I don't know if you're into Bitcoin.
A little nowhere near like what you are. I don't understand it fully, so things I don't understand, I normally just like try to shy away from. I
Mm-hmm.
wish instead of I'm trying to think when I was in high school and there was a couple of people that bought it. I was buying like Xbox Live passes, a gold pass instead. But
Ooh, yeah. I have a funny experience. Back in like 2012, I started getting into Bitcoin back in like 2011, 2012, and I had a bunch. And I I paid, my buddy took me out for dinner and bought me a steak sandwich, and I paid him back with half a Bitcoin in 2012, which is now worth 50K. Um, it's just, I love that story though. And and he still has it.
I was
And
going to
it's just
ask if he
this
had it.
funny joke. Like, and it's such an incredible story. I mean, Bitcoin as an asset is more valuable than like silver now as an asset class. Like that's insane. It's only been 10 years, and and now they're talking about doing a Bitcoin strategic reserve in the US, and nation states are adopting it. El Salvador adopted it. Like, money is really such an essential system to have be free and open, and not getting debased and printing money and stealing value from all the citizens. So I think I really do like feel like we're moving in the right direction. Things are definitely improving.
Why should the average person care about decentralization, open source technology, and how Minds approaches free speech?
You know, um, I think that an average person underestimates, kind of just feeding the Borg. It's very easy to say, oh, I have nothing to hide, so I don't care about surveillance. But that's a cop out. Like, everyone has something to hide. Like, if you didn't have anything to hide, you just like walk around naked. I mean, like so there's the average person. I think it's more so about voting with your attention and your energy and your dollars. Like, if we don't say take a cold turkey approach. I mean, look, I'm not a purist. Like, I'm on Instagram sometimes. I'm on Google like sometimes. Like, it's just part of the internet. It's impossible to escape. But contributing to open source networks, buying Bitcoin, trying out Minds, trying out other open source projects, it feeds them. And if you want a more transparent world, if you want a world where, there's more free speech, more privacy, more digital rights, you got to feed those things in order for them to grow. So, the average person, I like to compare it to food. Like, why should the average person care about, local, organic food? Most don't. Why should somebody care? Well, like, do you want to be healthy? Do you want to support like regenerative systems? Well, yeah, it's the same with tech. You're consuming these goods, and those goods are like impacting the world. So if you want to have a positive impact on the world, you should use these things, and you should buy good food, and you should, support those values that are embedded in all the different systems that we use.
How do you get somebody to take the first jump? Like using your analogy, how do you get someone to go from fast food to trying the locally grown food?
You just send people Bitcoin. You can, on Minds, we have this system where you can earn these tokens for your engagement and your contributions. And then the tokens get you views. So you can actually contribute to the site, post content, and earn more exposure on your stuff. A lot of the hardest part about Facebook and whatnot for an average person, like, what does an average person want? They just want to be heard. They want to post stuff, and they want people to hear about their thoughts. That's what social media is. Everybody's trying to have a voice. everybody wants to, be influential. But it's so hard to grow on these big tech networks because the algorithms are so restrictive, and it's really hard to grow. And so we try to make that easier for people by, giving them a vent to blast their message into if they just put in the energy. So we try to be more cooperative and rewarding in that sense. But yeah, like, because there's sort of like fundamental primal needs that the average person has. It's like, one is they want a voice, they want to be heard, they want to connect with people, which is hard to do when you post into this void and just no one sees your stuff. Everybody wants to make money, and so we've really kind of focused on monetization for users and trying to make that easier. People want to those two things, really, just connecting with other people, making money, but like instilling better values into that. And that's what people are doing on YouTube too. I mean, because you can blow up on YouTube, and YouTube is good for, they pay people. And so I think that, what's interesting though is like what the type of stuff that YouTube won't monetize it's just bizarre to me, because there's such a huge audience. Look at someone like Steven Crowder. Like, I'm not in love with his stuff, but a lot of people are, and he's a reasonable perspective, even if you don't like him. But like, to say that they wouldn't monetize him when there's such a big audience for him, it's like, why? It's just an ideological decision that they're making because they don't agree with him. And so I just think that the systems need to be more fair and transparent, because the problem is you invest your life into these platforms. People will, I've been on these platforms as well for like over a decades. And if, Minds was banned from Facebook, we got censored from the app stores for like 8 months. We've struggled, and we've experienced this censorship, firsthand. And look, I don't feel entitled to anything on these private platforms, but it's just like, if you're going to have a platform, like, be fair to your customers. I mean, when we got banned in the App Store, luckily we're back now, like, that really hurt our business. And so if you're going to invest all your time into these platforms, but you can't trust that you're actually going to even be able to exist there in the future, it's like you're investing in something that you don't even own. And so, again, to the average person and why it matters, it's like, invest in yourself, invest in stuff that you own and you can control. Because if you're going to invest in big tech, which, look, we all do, and you kind of need to a certain degree, but you're risking losing it all and having no alternative. So our approach is like, do both. Be doing them at the same time so that you have a backup plan, in case something happens.
Do you try to get like power users on the other sites to transfer over? Like somebody like a Joe Rogan, do you call him and say, hey,
yeah, Joe's on there. He doesn't post much. He's Joe like, and I don't, I think that Joe barely posts on any social media. And I think that, so we've actually kind of updated our model in the last year, where like we're kind of realizing that, because there's so much competition in social media and it's so expensive to stay relevant. Like, for instance, Rumble, which is like a rising video platform that's pretty pro free speech, they're losing like $30 million a quarter. And they're funded by Peter Thiel, but they have good momentum, and they are increasing revenue, and they're a public company, and they're doing a lot of things right. But in order to compete on the level of X and in Facebook and all these others, you have to pay creators. Creators are not going to be on your platform unless you pay them. And it costs many millions of dollars to get all the best ones there, which, we just frankly aren't interested in doing and can't keep up with. Like, we want to pay people, but like, we don't have millions of dollars to pay like individual creators. Like that's insane. So we just launched a new product, networks.minds.com, where you can actually integrate the Minds software into your own website, and you can have it on your own domain name, and you can have your own social network, and that can be interconnected with Minds. But we've realized that we actually want to not force everyone to, hey, come to minds.com and use our social app. Like, yes, a lot of people like to do that who are like smaller creators and whatnot. But for the bigger creators, maybe even you guys would be interested in, having your own community on your own website. And, because again, our values are in owning your own thing. And so in a sense and you own your data and all this, and, it's your own community. So it's like having your own Minds app, and we can, get customers into the app stores on their own app in the app stores using our code. So we've kind of shifted into that direction more recently, and it's going really well. Like, we're finding that, actually a lot of, like, Jimmy Dore, for instance, his app uses the Minds tech, and whereas beforehand it would have, like, Jimmy Dore is like a huge YouTube commentator. Whereas beforehand, it would have been really hard to, have, like, why is Jimmy going to come over? And I mean, he'll do it. Like, he'll post once in a while, but like, there's not as many people on Minds as there are on X or YouTube. So it's like, and are we going to be able to catch up? I don't know, maybe, but it makes more sense for him to have the tech on his own site integrated for his members and be able to own his own network so that he knows that he can never lose access to his own fans. So that's been a pretty cool evolution that we've gone through recently.
Can you tell us about your early years growing up? I read you were raised in an environment that fostered creativity and intellectual curiosity. Can you tell us about it?
Interesting. Yeah, I know for sure. I had very great upbringing. I grew up in Norwalk, Connecticut, on the beach, in kind of a quintessential neighborhood, riding, like, at 5 years old, I was running the streets, biking around with my friends, just getting into trouble. And it was amazing place to grow up. And, I went to boarding school, which was a crazy experience at Hotchkiss, which is like, kind of like Dead Poet Society type experience, where you're, crazy English teachers like walking on the table, you're learning about life. I, like, literally my, Frankenbach, was my teacher, and he was just like in that spirit. We had this really cool, like, campus in the woods, like, sneaking in the woods. There's all these cabins through the woods that you would sneak out to and, like, do things that I won't repeat. And so, that, and I started getting into art there pretty heavily and writing. And then I went to UVM, University of Vermont, up in Burlington, for university, and got super into, art there, like collaborative art, community organizing. That Minds actually started as Gathering of the Minds, and it was like this live event network. And so we would hold these forums in the City Hall Park, in the at University of Vermont, with professors, groups, and we would kind of merge like these debates. We would debate topics. Like, for instance, at UVM, we had one Gathering in the Minds event about how UVM was invested in all these weapons manufacturers. And so we brought in like this diverse group of people, and had everyone debate it. We actually eventually got the university to divest from weapons manufacturers, which was really cool. That was like the consensus of the group. And then we would also do like live art and music. It was very like crunchy, but was, you know, it was really cool. And, you know, I did a lot of like fine art and that kind of stuff. But, you know, yeah, mine's roots are in like community organizing, networking. And so we would do all these live events. And what I sort of, and this was as Facebook was just like blowing up, you know, back in like 2000, you know, 6. And I was pretty resistant to Facebook initially, but we started using social media a little bit, and like the live events are just so hard to scale. It's so hard. You know, I even, you know, we collaborated even with this huge music festival in Connecticut called Gathering of the Vibes, ironically. And that's like a 30,000 person music festival with like, you know, former Grateful Dead type, you know, James Brown, like the like all those types of bands and whatnot. And I was an organizer there. And it's just you put all this energy into these live events and then it's just gone. Like you work on an event for 6 months to bring all these people together and it's just and then it's just over and everyone dissipates and it's amazing to do, but it's I started really once I started learning about open source um, and you know encryption and like kind of the free internet. I started realizing that building the network for these ideas, like you know, it was really important to embrace the internet as opposed to like be resistant to, you know, to technology. Because I was kind of like I was almost like so disgusted with Facebook and just seeing that everyone's head was just buried in their phones all day that I rejected it. And but then yeah, but then I saw that you know it's not black or white, and then we just embraced digital, and we still do events. Like we did an event at the Beacon Theater in New York City a few years ago. We had like you know Cornell West, Coleman Hughes, James O'Keefe, Tulsi Gabbard, Tim Pool, like all of these really cool speakers debating stuff on stage, people on the left and the right. So we still have that spirit of like the civil dialogue and, you know, debate, both, you know, looking at both sides. And, you know, but again, it's still just that events are, I don't know if you guys have ever put together big events, but
No,
it's a
I know it's
lot.
painful. My dad did. I don't know if you ever see. My dad used to do this big charity event. That was so for me. I was a young kid, and he would bring a bunch of professional athletes and all that stuff. It was so fun to go to. But I remember he spent a lot of time putting that
Yeah, it's
together.
hard.
That's so cool that I didn't realize you guys did like the debates and stuff. That's something that I wish there was more of on the internet. Everything is so, you know, like the title of the video is like, and I enjoy people who are intellectually. What's the right way to phrase this so I don't get so I don't box myself in. I like when I don't care what your opinion is. If you're smart and you can articulate it well and you're passionate about it, I want to hear it. Whether it's left, right, center, you know, anything. I don't. So somebody like Ben Shapiro, I think, is really smart and can articulate things, but he also, you know, he'll the video will be like Ben Shapiro decimates 18-year-old college student. And it's like, that's just, it's so, it makes me cringe because he actually is really smart and really,
Right, right.
and then you just see him light up, you know, some 17, 18-year-old kid, their first week on campus. And, you know, he's right. He wins the argument, but I wish it was more, kind of what you're describing. I've never seen it, but I'll have to maybe after this, send me a link to it or something.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think that there's a number of cool projects that are focusing on like, and I think Shapiro. Have you heard of Jubilee?
Yeah.
They're cool. They have a monster YouTube channel, and they do like putting people different opposite sides of the spectrum next to each other and just like going at it. And I think, that's just what the world needs to me. It's kind of like good spirited, like agree to disagree, or, change your mind, like Crowder's whole change my mind series. Like that was really cool.
Yeah.
And like do you know Destiny?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I've done his I've been on his show a number of times. He's come to a bunch of our events. He came to the one that I mentioned, and he's a wild guy. He sometimes I'm more and more I'm feeling like he's digging himself into this like this reflexive contrarianism that's like, I don't know. It's borderline. It's borderline bad faith. I'm not sure. I
Yeah.
I can't tell anymore. Because he's historically been like one of the few liberals who's been willing to have the conversation, even through the whole like culture wars of the last number of years. And I still do have a lot of respect for him for being willing to talk to anyone. But yeah, he's kind of gotten a little bit more inflammatory recently.
Yeah. But it's hard too, because that's what, not just for him, but for a lot of those people, like the inflammatory stuff that gets people clicking on it and sharing it and talking about it. Right. And that's kind of full circle back to social media, is like, they want controversy. They're going to promote something that will tick you off rather than something that'll make you stop and think.
Yeah. Yeah, rage bait is not cool. Because I really do. I think that viral content. I think you can achieve crazy viral stuff without sacrificing principles of just like feeding unnecessary division. It's like, sometimes division is necessary, and like there are bad ideas. Um, but I feel like sometimes people just take this like blind polarized view just because they know that they can get more sensational clips out of it, and it's unfortunate.
Yeah, there's this great line. It's like a Charlie Munger, who's Warren Buffett's partner at Berkshire Hathaway. He has a couple of things about this that I love that he said, and I'm paraphrasing, but one of them was like, don't have an opinion on something unless you know the other side's argument better than the average person on that side, because most people really don't know why they feel away. They just kind of, and they're not that informed with the other side. They just hear one opinion and they argue it rather than, really understanding the full issue. And then another thing he said that kind of ties into this is about, especially with like young men, they pick an opinion and they just like, they dig in on it rather than, one of the things he said was, every time he gets new information, he retains the right to change his opinion, which makes sense, right? It's so obvious. But especially when you're younger, you're like, no, everything's tribal. I'm a
Right.
Republican. I'm a Democrat. Anything, every single thing, every single issue, I must be on this side. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I think what's interesting about the current administration is that you've kind of got all these former Democrats involved.
Yeah.
Elon, Tulsi, RFK, and they've kind of all come together with Trump to and look, I have a lot of issues with Trump, but you kind of got to give a W when a W is due, for certain things. Like this whole like Department of Government Efficiency is completely wild. And I don't know if you just saw that Representative Luna just announced that they're opening up a declassification office for JFK assassination, RFK, MLK, UFOs, and 9/11. And
Wow.
they're gonna like all this stuff is gonna be coming out, or probably not all of it, but like some at least new information is gonna come out, and that's I was not expecting that, to be honest. I've been so skeptical that they we're gonna follow through on that kind of thing, And, yeah, I just wish the media would engage in better faith. I feel like like for instance, Sam Harris, I think I used to be a huge Sam Harris fan, like really hardcore. And just he taught me so much. And I've just what he's done now, and just his inability to kind of see any nuanced perspective on, Elon, like or Trump. It's just like, why can't you let yourself evolve a little bit?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I don't know if you follow, Christopher Hitchens much, but Sam always says that he thinks Sam is certain that Christopher Hitchens would have hated Trump and would have never, given him a moment of of or a chance of steel manning anything he does. And I just disagree. I think Hitchens would be more optimistic about what's going on. But again, he's dead, so you can't you can't know.
You studied English at the University of Vermont, which isn't the typical background of someone leading a social media platform. How did your education shape your views on technology and communication?
Yeah, I was like, doing writing essays about, Jack Kerouac uh, and Tom Wolfe, and reading all the beats. I was that was kind of my focus, like modern American lit. And I also studied music. I have a minor in music, jazz, bass. And I think that what it did for me was it just taught me, pretty deep analytical skills, like, just reading and writing so much, analyzing and interpreting what I'm reading. Like, that's really the base of it. And, it definitely helps with creativity and design. But yeah, I've never used directly my degree, but it's just foundational knowledge. Similar to at Hotchkiss, it was like very, very similar, just like liberal arts skills. And yeah, it equipped me with just like really good overall general purpose knowledge on how to attack what I ultimately wanted to do. And then I just started researching software and tech. And I'm not a full stack developer or anything. I'm a technical person. I'm more of a open source researcher and product designer more so than a developer. My partner Mark Harding is our CTO, and he's our developer, and he kind of codes a lot of the ideas that we design together. And so having a creative relationship where like I can help with like high level strategy and um and product vision, and then Mark can come through and implement the code, it's really fun. It's uh you know and now with AI and the way things are going, we even had a debate on our team call this morning about Mark thinks that, and this is a fact, most AI generated code is absolute garbage, and it's actually going to cause a lot of problems because you have all these people launching these like really bad AI apps that like have security vulnerabilities and are just like built like crap. However, we are actually integrating AI on mines, and getting large language models implemented. And so I think there's a good way to do AI and a bad way to do AI. But yeah, long answer to your question. I think that it's really just general purpose knowledge. Like, look, I mean, right now I'm teaching my daughter to read. She's 5. and she does a homeschool program, and but we're teaching her to read at home. The homeschool is more like Waldorf style, and just watching her learn to read. Like in the last month, she went like a month ago she could not read. She can now read like the first level books after a month of just going hard on it. And at the end, I think that is really the only core skill is just reading, writing, math. And from there, you can just learn anything you need to learn to do what you want to do. Um, yeah.
So our kids are like the same age. I have a 5-year-old daughter who literally on this trip we're on learned to read. So she couldn't when we first got here, and now she's reading those
Nice.
first. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. It's crazy too. Like, cause we've been working on it for a while, but we just got this workbook that it just has a really good chronology of, easy, just doing the right things in the right order, and it doesn't overwhelm her. 15 minutes a day in the morning. It's all you really have to do, just working through the workbook. And it's incredible, man. It is, it's such a cool experience watching kids learn. My other son is just, finally he's been babbling, nonsense for like the last 6 months, and now like pretty legit sentences are starting to emerge. And you're like, whoa, did you just say like a full sentence? Like you've been babbling gibberish for 6 months. How are you? But it's like seeing the coherence emerge out of the gibberish. It's like, because that whole time the gibberish is such an important phase of the process, because their brains are actually, because they understand, they know all the words because they understand you, and then the process of like the gibberish mutating into real words is like, so you're seeing it too, I'm sure.
Yeah, exact
Yeah,
same thing.
yeah, man, it's so crazy.
What inspired you to start Minds? Was there a moment when you realized there was a need for an alternative to mainstream social media?
Yeah, I think that, from the original version of Minds, which was like this live collaboration, into, this decentralized social network, it really is all about global collaboration. And that's why it's called Minds, because that's what it's meant to represent. It's supposed to be like co-created by the community owned. And so whether that's a live event and people sort of like co-creating this experience, or creating this network, it's just harnessing community to let people spread their messages. And so yeah, that's kind of the common thread. And I think that we're moving, like, even though we haven't blown up to be, the size of Facebook or anything, I'm very confident. Like we've had massive impact, I think, in terms of influencing the industry. And because when we started in 2011, I mean, and before that, all the way back to 2006 with like the live events, but like the open source push was back in 2011 originally. No one was talking about this. I mean, there was like original internet pioneers like talking about open source systems. There was an undercurrent, but now it's like open source is like a dominating force in Silicon Valley. Decentralization is a dominant force. It's and so we've been, and we've helped push that message. And so, we're really proud of that. And we, it would be antithetical to open source and decentralization for us to like get all, to be the only ones doing it. Like the whole purpose of it is that there's all of these different implementations of it, and different strategies around it. So, um, So yeah, I think I think in another 10 years we're just going to see that all the different social media apps have pushed more into this direction. I think in 10 years we're going to see interoperability between all the big tech sites. I think that they're all going to fold and get involved more. They're all going to be involved with crypto more. They're going to be, you're not going to be locked in, hopefully. And so I think we're just going to keep moving in that direction. And as much as we are a part of it, and a solution, a particular solution that people use to achieve that, that's great.
Some critics argue that Minds provides a space for users that have been deplatformed elsewhere, including extremists. How do you respond to concerns that Minds could become a haven for misinformation or harmful content?
Yeah, so, I would ask the same of X or any other network. I think so. I mentioned, so we wrote this paper called The Censorship Effect. We brought together PhDs in, the realm of censorship studies, and also Daryl Davis, who's a close friend of mine. And he and I presented this paper on the Joe Rogan podcast. And it's really powerful in terms of understanding. So the concerns around misinformation and platforming extremists, like in our opinion, yes, those are concerns, but they do not outweigh the concerns of the alternative, which is just a dystopian censorship world where no one can really speak their mind. Everyone is walking on eggshells for the algorithm. And actually, most people spouting this idea of like, oh, you're platforming extremists, or you're spreading misinformation, they haven't even looked at the actual studies. The studies show that when you ban people, they just go and become more radical, and in some cases become violent. So there are direct correlations between censorships and violence. Like, for instance, there was one case where YouTube banned a woman. I think she was from the Middle East somewhere. She was like a dance influencer. They banned her. She showed up at the YouTube offices and shot people. I don't think anyone was killed, but when you and obviously it's not YouTube's fault that happened. Like, and I'm not. But when you ban people, you create psychological like trauma. I mean, you're disconnecting people from their community and their network. You're forcing them into isolation. When people become isolated, they become radicalized in their views. So, look at school shooters. Most of them have been socially ostracized and isolated. If you want to cause real social harm, what you do is ban extremists. I mean, for instance, like Daryl, who is famous for, helping de-radicalize hundreds of KKK members. This is a black man who literally goes around befriending KKK members. And he's he's world famous for this. And, we work with him on Minds, and we directly engage with these people. I talk to neo-Nazis regularly. And, first of all, it's a very small percentage of our user base, which are actually extreme users like that. And every network has them. I mean, just look at Kanye on X the other day, posting swastikas. Like, so, but again, it's a psychological game. If you ban Kanye for posting swastikas, which they already did once, but they actually didn't ban him right now. He deactivated. If you ban Kanye, he's just going to become more of a Nazi. First of all, I'm not even convinced. Like, a part of me thinks that he's just trolling and just doing it because he always likes to do the opposite of what the world wants him to do. It's hard to tell what he actually believes about Hitler and whatnot. But yeah, so I think that, and again, misinformation. In order to have an informed opinion about anything, you need to have the widest access to information in order to have an informed opinion so you can make a decision for yourself about what is true. So if you're on a censor happy social network like Facebook, where a huge part of the political spectrum is just banned from speaking, that is creating a more of an environment of misinformation than on Minds. Because on Minds, yes, sure, there's some misinformation, but you have a wide spectrum of information to engage with, so you can see all the different sides. So I think that this concern around like feeling like we have to censor in order to stop misinformation. No one will ever stop misinformation. Misinformation is just, there's nothing, people are allowed to be wrong and have wrong opinions. They're allowed to be stupid. They're allowed to be idiots. You're never going to stop people from being wrong. So this whole pursuit of ending misinformation, first of all, it's impossible. And nor would we want that. It's part of all of our individual growth processes to be wrong at a certain point and then update our views. So to say if I made a post about, I don't know, some supplement that I think is really awesome and like helps my health, maybe it later comes out that supplement, was, non-effective or something. It's like, okay, I was wrong. I was posting misinformation about a supplement, but should I be banned for that? No, of course not. It's like, it's counterproductive. So I understand the gut reaction to want to censor, but I think we have to develop more of a muscle and integrity to understand, like, okay, just because I'm seeing something that makes me uncomfortable or maybe factually incorrect, like, again, and like community notes, I think is and we're actually working on developing kind of a similar community notes type system on Minds. We have a jury system on Minds for helping with moderation, but we haven't integrated community notes yet. But like community notes are part of the solution to that, because if you have a piece of misinformation and then you have this like crowdsourced dialogue surfacing the sort of most trusted, consensus among the community underneath the post, like that's the world that I want to live in. I'm okay with seeing things that are wrong, as long as we're using the power of social networks to generate that context and elevate the best ideas. So yeah, no, I think it's a really important question. And I think the media has actually manipulated people and brainwashed the world to be so afraid of misinformation, but not be afraid of censorship. And because the media, quite frankly, they are amateurs when it comes to censorship studies, and they don't even understand what they're actually talking about. You tell someone to, show me some empirical data that shows that banning misinformation actually solves the problem, and they will just come up with nothing.
If there's something that is misinformation, I guess you said you're working on a community notes style thing, some way to flag it. But I agree with what you're saying. But I do think that you should have some kind of thing in there that at least, it's a controversial thought or a controversial opinion or a not proven, and then it's, if you start at supplements, right? It's like, where do you draw the line in that whole argument? Supplements, I think, is
That's
a
the
great
thing.
example.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
So like, miss it. Yeah. So like, cause supplements is something that, it's like a normal thing. You're like, oh wait, that could be that. Oh, that's medical misinformation. If you're talking about some supplement that, is unproven, but then, people don't as much talk about like that type of misinformation. Mostly they're talking about like political misinformation, or misinformation about Hitler or something like that.
Right.
But then misinformation. What is misinformation? It's just it's just wrong information. So if I say, make a post saying like the sky is orange, like should I not be allowed to say that?
Do you think large-scale efforts like Project Liberty can realistically shift the power dynamics of the internet away from big tech? Or is a more grassroots, decentralized approach like what you're building with Minds the way forward?
It seems like I have to dig into Project Liberty more. I'm on their site more, and it seems really it seems pretty cool. So I haven't I'm not too familiar with them, but I will I'll definitely dig in. I think that it seems like um, we agree that the internet is broken. We agree that the surveillance is a huge issue, and it seems like we're working on very similar problems. So maybe you guys can help connect us, and we can work
I
together.
just I just took my phone out and I was texting him. I'm gonna
Nice.
text the guy. Yeah, I gotta connect you guys.
Tim, how did you get involved in interested in this stuff?
Frank McCourt was the one that really opened my eyes to it. I was one of those "I've got nothing to hide" guys you were describing.
Ah, you were. Yeah, I mean, I it's an interesting conversation because I do believe that living your life in a way of like having nothing to hide, you want to be consistent in your character. And, I'm sure you are. And I think that living life as if it's a movie and like people are watching you, I think there's certain benefits to that, because it makes you be, your best self. You don't want to be some like really dark personality in private with your family, and then just like different depending on the the situation you're in. But also, if you feel like you're being watched, and if you are being watched, then you are going to change your behavior, because there's a chilling effect where if you think the government is going to come, I don't know, like, or you're going to get some kind of social consequences for speaking your mind, then you're gonna self censor, and self censorship is actually the darkest form. So I think that yeah, there's benefits to living like you got nothing to hide, but also I think that the people who when we say that, I don't think we're really being honest with ourselves. And Edward Snowden is probably the best for this topic, and his arguments against the phrase "I've got nothing to hide." um it's like, just because you have nothing to hide doesn't mean you want prophecy. It's like, just because you still want freedom of speech, even if you're not the type of person who's out there using your speech much, you still want the right to be able to do it. So just because you have more of like a public personality, and you don't have anything to hide, it doesn't mean that you want to give the government the ability, or corporations the ability, to be spying on you, so that they can then cook up whatever narrative they want, because they have all of this information about your behavior, which they can use for purposes that you may not consent with. So I think that people get confused because they think that it's about them misbehaving, but what we're actually concerned about in the privacy movement is what are the people with this data, how are they going to misuse the data? So it's not like, even if you're fine with people having that data, it's like people can misuse it. So you know um but yeah, it's pretty complicated topic.
Blockchain and decentralization have been major buzzwords in tech, but for the average person, these concepts can feel abstract. Can you explain in simple terms how decentralization can benefit everyday users of social media?
Yeah, sure. So I think Bitcoin isn't I think the easiest way to think about it. With Bitcoin, in your wallet on your phone, which you download this app, and that's your wallet, and there's a private key, which is your password to that wallet. It's essentially like having a bank in your own self-custody. So rather than keeping your money at a bank, which you don't control, you're keeping your money in your own control. So the bank is not a middleman between you and your money. And additionally, with central banks, they control the ledger, which uh, and banks control the ledgers. And so with Bitcoin, you have all these basically computers running all over the world. And what they're doing um, is running the ledger. And so there's a copy of the full transaction history of everything that's ever happened on Bitcoin on all of these nodes. And so it's a more resilient system. So in like an individual centralized bank can just, first of all, things can be manipulated, and with central banks, money can be printed. And so with decentralized systems like Bitcoin, you're protecting the integrity because nobody can manipulate it, and the individual users of it have full control over their assets. And so it's the same with decentralized social media. It's about ownership of your stuff, your data, whether it's your money, your content, or what. And so that just seems like a better system, because why would we want unnecessary middlemen, and why would we not want math and technology to be and encryption to be protecting our networks, our monetary networks, as opposed to shady banks? It's just like it's an obvious upgrade. And it's not just, you don't have to take my word for it. Society is deciding this. That's why it's we've had the dollar for a really long time, and it's shifted, and the policy changes, and it was backed by gold, and then it wasn't, and it keeps getting debased and printing more money, and there's nothing we can do to stop it. With Bitcoin, the rules are the rules, and changing the rules, while it is possible to change the rules, you need consensus from the whole community in order to get changes submitted into the system. And so it requires a much deeper level of social consensus, rather than the Federal Reserve, guys on Jekyll Island deciding to manipulate the whole system. So I think that regardless of if people are, most people's eyes glaze over, but at the end of the day, when you think of decentralized sovereign systems, just think it's better. It's more ownership for you, and it's more social consensus is required to change it, and it's a more secure system for society.
We've seen major platforms like Twitter under Elon Musk position themselves as more free speech friendly. What do you think of Twitter's approach compared to Minds?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's definitely been an upgrade since old Twitter under Dorsey. But I think that there's still a little bit of sketchiness. Like for instance, early on when Elon took over, he was banning Substack links, and people like Matt Taibbi and other Substack writers, they couldn't even post links to their work, and that seemed to be some competitive situation because Substack was trying to launch a social thing, and we don't really know why that happened. Additionally, they were censoring some mentions of decentralized protocols. And so I think that, look, I think Elon's on the right side of history, but I also think that he's a savage businessman, and he's ruthless, and he's going to win. He's going to do what he can to win. And so he's not just, his strategy is, I think, mostly free speech, but he's also kind of, it seems, made the decision that he's going to, use a little bit of censorship when he wants to on certain things. And so, it's not a perfect system. It's a better system. I'm trying to get in touch with Elon. I really want to work with him. I would love to collaborate between Minds and X. I think that they're doing a lot of things right. I mean, good Lord, they fired 80% of the staff and they're rolling out features like 10 times faster. Like, what a mess that company was. Good Lord. It's unbelievable. So, I have look, the Elon Musk haters, it's just, we have to be able to appreciate people for their contributions and sure, still criticize them, but like, this idea that people are trying to act like Elon Musk is some sort of like threat to the country is, it's really a lot of mental gymnastics. And, again, I think that there are certain things about him, like that, yeah, there's a little bit of sketchiness there, but let's just, we need to look at the overall picture. And I think that he will improve over time. He has been improving over time. He's been willing to take chances that Zuckerberg was unwilling to take. Elon was the first big tech CEO to implement some of these policies. Zuckerberg is just like the social climber who is just, now he's like, oh, hey guys, like, can I play? Like, can I? He's just like the follower. And look, even still with that, I think it's good that Zuckerberg is moving more in this direction and bring Dana White. He's a big conservative Trump supporter. Brought him on the board of Facebook. I mean, that would have been unthinkable a year ago.
Right.
And so, and they're rolling back a lot of the some of the ideological policies. That's crazy that is even starting to happen at Facebook. So I think that Zuckerberg is going to keep moving in that direction. I would also like to talk with him. To be honest, that Meta, their lawyers contacted me. This is a little secret story. Their lawyers contacted me because I was actually interviewed by the DOJ on by like 20 lawyers. The DOJ reached out because they wanted to know how Facebook had censored us. And in Facebook, I told them, and then Facebook lawyers hit me up and they wanted to talk to me to know what I said to them. And I responded, I said, sure, I'll talk to you, but I'll talk to Mark. And then Mark didn't want to talk, I guess.
It's probably the lawyers didn't even pass the message on. They're
probably not. Yeah.
What does the next 5 to 10 years look like for Minds? What's your long-term vision for the platform?
Yeah, I think that we're really leaning into modularizing and integrating outside of ourselves and our own domain. We want to integrate with many other websites. We want to become more a part of the fabric as opposed to, another silo. We don't want to be a silo. And that's how a lot of the big networks are positioned now. It's these big silos. And whereas and we have a small silo, but we really want to be more of the fabric layer. And and be integrated in, many, many websites. And I think that that's a really important realization for us to have, and kind of like check our own ego and realize, like, look, we don't even think the future of the internet is like everybody joining minds. The future of the internet is more so all the millions of websites in the world integrating this layer into their own tech. And so that's been that's been really rewarding, and we're already finding that the creators, especially, big publishers are they like this approach more, because, and which makes sense because they get more ownership of it, as opposed to having to join another social network, which nobody really wants to do at this point, because it's like everybody already has 10 social media profiles, and it's like we want to help people build their own foundation.
Is that a business pivot, or is that a vision pivot? Meaning, did you guys do that because you see whatever X maybe going more free speech hurts minds from a business standpoint, or did you change that? From, I guess, did you think that's the best situation for the internet, or did you do it as a reaction, as like
It's actually both, and I think that it was it's almost as if, like, yeah, because what X has done is they've taken a lot of the, like, our talking points and our principles that we've been talking about for a decade, and they're kind of dominating the conversation on that now. And so a lot of the people who were looking for free speech social networks before, now they're kind of satisfied with X.
Mm-hmm.
It's like X is sort of doing, it's like enough free speech for them that they don't really need. So it's kind of yes to both of those. It's not I wouldn't call it a pivot. It's more of a reframing of our. It's because it's the same software, but rather than us being the ones running it, and, like, yeah, before people could run their own, and there were people, there are other examples of people who took our stack and run their entirely own network, but it was not happening very often. And so now we're, like, really leaning into that more. And during that process, we realized that, wait a second, this actually is more in line with our principles.
And okay. And have you seen a reaction to that already? I mean, you said it sounds like companies are more interested in that.
Big publishers and companies are more interested in this, because it's just more clearly strategic for them to have it on their platform. It's, they're trying to build their platform. That's what everybody's trying to do. So why are we telling people to come over to us? You know what I mean? It's like we should come to them.
Do you think decentralized social media can ever become truly mainstream, or will platforms like Minds always serve a niche audience?
I think that the ideas are going mainstream, and so, regardless of if Minds specifically, I don't know. I think that we've already, we've reached millions so far. We've had millions of signups, and we have a lot of people that we've influenced. So, it's not billions, but so I think it'll, like, probably more niche, but I'm optimistic that it could pop further than that. I think I'm okay with being more of a um, kind of subtle cultural force, as opposed to delusions of grandeur.
If you had unlimited resources, what's one thing you would change about Minds today?
That's a good one. I mean, honestly, with unlimited resources, yeah, then you just, get all of the content. I mean, you with unlimited resources, you can incentivize all of the top creators to come or to implement it on their own site. So I think that with unlimited resources, it just gives you that distribution. And so, yeah, I think that I think we would just be able to accelerate the adoption, but I don't think we would really change too much about like our roadmap. I think that we're pretty like we would keep working on, better implementations of like sovereign identity, more like making more portable identity, more portable, your content being more portable. Again, just but continuing to just reinforce the ownership, individual ownership. And so, yeah, I think it would accelerate our ability to develop the features faster, keep up with all of the multi-billion-dollar big tech networks who, to their credit, produce really great user experiences. They have the, best designers and UX people. But I think that the mission would continue. I mean, no one's really like. I would be curious, to both of you, like when it comes to this space, other than Minds, like who comes to mind?
For free speech, if you said, before meeting you here, if someone said, "What's the free speech platform?" I would think X. Yeah, that's what I
And
would
what
think of.
about open source and decentralized?
Yeah, I guess I probably would have thought that, but and obviously incorrectly, as you, you pointed out a couple of times. But that's probably what I would have. That's probably what I would have gone to initially. And then the freedom of speech thing I've heard about, Rumble versus YouTube and all that stuff. But I didn't. I definitely have learned. I've learned a lot. A lot of stuff you said I've never heard before, so I've definitely learned a lot more about it.
Come on, it's Minds all the way.
Yeah. So here, in Troy, maybe you can help answer some of these. But so Tim, so the smirk is that's a full blown real smirk.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you just tell me a little bit more about and Tim, please feel
Yeah.
free to jump in. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're saying with my dad's like communication.
Yeah, and like the tech, like do you in terms of like the tech there, like that's really interesting as well. Like,
Yeah,
uh,
there's this.
yeah,
So when you have ALS, and I didn't know anything about it until really my dad had. I'd heard people say the ice bucket challenge, and I'd heard of another football player named Steve Gleason who had it. But his brain, everything's 100%. It's purely like muscles. Actually, I'll say his brain. I don't know. His brain was 100% before. Whatever his brain was before ALS, it carried over. If it was started at 100, then it's still 100. But and then he uses this. It's called Tobii Dynavox. It's a tablet. It's hard to explain, but I guess I'd say it looks like an iPad that has a camera on the bottom, and it looks at his eyes. And wherever he looks with his eyes and keeps them idle, it selects a letter. So everything he's saying to you, he's type of dad. I'm talking like you're not right here. He's selecting each letter one at a time and then hitting talk. So it's pretty, yeah.
how do you feel about Neuralink?
It's funny. It's a funny topic because we were just talking about this.
Yeah.
My dad wanted to jump in and do it. He was like trying to sign up to be in like the beta testing, but this is how I feel about it. If there's like three companies that are all neck and neck, and they all tell you that no one else is close to them. They're in the lead, but they're all very close, and all three of them can safely put it into your brain, but none of them can safely take it out of your brain. So the reason why that matters is if you get, another company is called BrainGate. If you BrainGate interfaces with your brain, right? If you get the brain chip and the mesh and all that, and then Elon Musk says, you know what, I'm going to take $100 billion of resources and personally and put it into this, Neuralink, and Neuralink just takes off and is the best by far. Once you pick, as of right now, unless something new has come out, once you pick a lane, like you're stuck in that lane. So you can't get BrainGate. If BrainGate gets installed in your head, and then you say, never mind, I want to switch to Neuralink, like they can't take it out. So once you pick a horse, you have to. So with Elon Musk, it's like, in my opinion, I'm a pretty big fan from a business side. Socially, I mean, I think he's fine too. But from a business side, I'm a huge fan of his, like reading his books and hearing what he's done. If he decides that Neuralink will be his important project, I think they'll beat everybody else. It's a win for everybody who needs it anyways, regardless of who wins. But you'd hate to go, and the same thing the other way though, if you decide you're going to go with Neuralink, and then Elon's like, you know what, this is taking too much. It's too much of a distraction. We need to get people to Mars, and I want to focus on that and just shut Neuralink down. Like anybody who has a Neuralink chip would be kind of shit out of luck, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I think that that's what I'm interested in the, brain, the brain computer interface. Who's the open source player? Who's the player? Who's creating? Who's building these principles into that? Because if you're going to put software and hardware into your own, physical body, you probably want to make sure that your brain can't get hacked.
Yeah.
But and the only way that you can know if your brain's not getting hacked is if the code is transparent, so that the smartest people in the world can audit it and understand that what exactly it's doing. So I think that's, and we're still obviously super early in the development of these systems, but I do believe that there will emerge sort of like the mind's alternative for, Neuralink. Or if Neuralink is smart, I think that they really should be the ones to be the most transparent with how the technology actually works. And because that's what is going to get the most public scrutiny, public auditing. And, look, I mean, regardless if you have of what the condition is, we're all inevitably going to be faced with severe health issues. That's just how life goes. And over time, kind of the inevitable transhumanist future that we have coming, like, we're all going to be faced likely with that decision, like, hey, do you want to integrate this technology so that you can heal? Like, do you want to do these nanobots and go kill the cancer in your body? Do you want to get this implant for XYZ? And for me, if I was told, like, maybe I went blind or couldn't hear, and if I could do this implant, then I could get that back. For anybody, that would be, obviously a pretty clear decision. But it would be even clearer to me if I knew that the tech that I'm literally connecting with my very body is going to respect my sovereign rights, because it's a pretty scary thing.
Yeah. That's something the Toby Dynavox CEO in our episode, he said that one of the things that are worried about with like predictive AI is if it gets so good that people rely on it and it really becomes like the AI talking, not you.
Right.
Like when you're typing a text and it'll suggest the words and it's almost always right. Well, the amount of time and effort it takes for my dad or anybody using products like that is so much longer that if they suggest it, it'd be so much easier for it. If when my dad met you, said, if it suggested, hey, Bill, how are you doing today? Even though he was just going to say, hey, Bill, right? He'll just say that him typing it takes a minute versus him just clicking the one
Right,
button.
right. Yeah, that's interesting. I think that that is, I mean, that's already happening even just with like,
Yeah.
Chat GPT and like, editing your own writing with it. And it's like, it articulates things in like not exactly the way that you would, but it still gets the point across. So, and I think that that's a solvable problem, because it's like at the end of the day, the message is only going to go out once, your dad approves it. So even like, it's like he could always go back and edit it if he wants it to. And again, it's how fast is the how fast can it iterate? So if what you're thinking is, hey Bill, but then it puts, hey Bill, how are you doing? But then if you can just think that you want how are you doing gone before it gets sent, like,
Yeah.
I think there's ways to.
Yeah, it's all the speed, right? So right now,
Yeah, it's all the
what my
speed.
what my dad's doing, I think that you can do about 20 words per minute versus talking. I think it's close to like 100 words per minute, and I think you can hear like 180 words per minute.
Mm-hmm.
So it's 20 words per minute beats the hell out of zero, right? But right now, Neuralink I think is still slower than the eye tracker.
Thanks, Troy. If I had typed that all out, it would have taken me a while. Bill, what advice would you give to someone concerned about privacy, censorship, and the future of the internet?
I would say, if you're not doing anything about it, then there's some easy steps to take, which take like 5 minutes. You know, download a VPN. You download an encrypted email system. I think like Proton does a pretty good job of, they have a VPN, they have email, it's all encrypted. The Brave browser, it's a more privacy centric version of Chrome, uh, which is good. Try out Minds. Just try these things. Get these tools on your phone. Um, and that's it. That's all you need to know. It can be passive. Our default settings on our phones and computers are super impactful. Like, every day. So if you have a Mac, every day you open your computer, what browser do you use? Are you just like using Safari? Well, why? What if why are you going to open Safari every day? It's just giving Apple energy. What, you can just download Brave and then you have more privacy. And it's just, you don't even do anything different. All you did was change a default setting. So I think getting in control of your default settings is something that takes a very short amount of time and will have a lasting impact for your whole life. Because as opposed to just, because it's all the passive data that accumulates and becomes huge in terms of what we're giving to these platforms. So, but there's sacrifices there. Like Proton Mail is also like frustrating. Like it's not as snappy as Gmail. And so I think that, but again, it's not necessarily either or. Like you can do both. You can have both. You want to have options where, like Signal, for instance, on your phone for encrypted messaging is amazing. It feels super fast. It's super secure. It's becoming ubiquitous. And, you just want a place to write things and share things which other people could never get access to. Because like if you're just texting somebody, say you're texting your wife, say, you get a little spicy in your texts. Um, you know, that's for you and your wife. Why do you need to be worrying about what if Verizon gets hacked and suddenly your stuff is leaked because Verizon got hacked? That can never happen on Signal. and I think that's actually a pretty good example of how, like, yeah, you had nothing to hide, but guess what? Verizon could get hacked.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't want that to be out there.
What's one thing that you wish more people understood about minds?
I think it gets back to what you were asking about before, with the misinformation stuff. Like, ultimately, like, part of the burden that we feel, and I think others in the free speech space feel, is that because we're trying to defend a principle, we're letting this content exist. Again, with the caveat, it's just a very small percentage of the content. You probably won't even experience it if you sign up. But that a lot of people think that because this content's on the platform, that it's like we agree with it. No, it's we've created a system that allows diverse views to exist, and so I do think that a lot of people mistake the existence of the content for, our approval of it.
Are there any upcoming projects or features in Minds that you're particularly excited about?
There's one cool feature that we rolled out recently, which is called Supermind, and it's basically where I can send you an offer to reply to me, and I can send you either cash or tokens. And so, I send Troy, like, hey, post a video, I really want to hear, your perspective on this. And there's like an incentive baked in to it. So Troy gets a notification saying, hey, Bill's offering you, $20 to, reply to this. And so it's like this monetary engagement system, which sort of incentivizes creators and, helps people engage with each other. I think that's been pretty interesting, because again, it's just like helping creators earn. That's been a really big thing. We've been doing this AI stuff where we're integrate. I think the way that X has integrated Grok is pretty good, and it's like very sort of embedded throughout the application. And so we're actually taking our AI implementation in a similar direction. And, we want people to, with open source privacy preserving AI, not, Skynet. And because look, I mean, LLMs are insane. They're super useful, and there's really no reason to shy away from it. I think that, there's still plenty of concerns with them and how they're trained and all this kind of thing. But I think that there's just, it's an undeniable, like, major leap in terms of how things are working. So, there's some pretty cool applications for being able to train your own AI assistant on Minds to, understand all of your content so that it can help, people who are following you, answer their questions and whatnot about everything that you've ever done. So everybody kind of has their own personal assistant that is totally aware of, like, the full knowledge base of, all that person's work. I think that's a pretty big deal. And yeah, I could keep going, but yeah, those are a couple things.
As a a parent with young kids and also knowing a lot about social networks, would you let your kids use Minds when they got older, or any social media stuff? And when would you
When they
start?
get older, probably not until they're 18, to be honest.
That's what I was wondering. Is it an age where you thought it was?
Yeah, probably 18 for Minds. I think that I mean, my oldest is 11, and she's in 6th grade, and she doesn't have a phone. Definitely not getting her a phone probably until high school. And even then, we'll keep it pretty locked down. Like a lot of her friends are on TikTok, and you can just see their brains just getting fried,
Yeah.
and it's not cool. So, and the school is even like promoting TikTok. Like the school uses TikTok a lot. I called the principal. I was like, dude, why are you like, you realize that not all the kids in your school have phones. Like, why are you like promoting the school's TikTok at this? Like,
Yeah, it
this
doesn't make
guy's
any
just
sense.
clueless. And so, I definitely kind of lean towards like Jonathan Haidt's work on, kids and social media. I think that kids and social media do not mix for the most part. I think that you do want kids to be technologically adept and literate. So I do like show my kids AI. I do this thing with my daughter sometimes, like, once every couple weeks. So like, instead of reading a book before bed, we'll just like talk to we'll just do like AI image generation together, and like just like create these like really like crazy magical scenes, and it's
Yeah.
just like anything that she can think, and it's just like, oh, it shows up. Like, that's insane. It's so much fun. So I really like that. I want them to understand the internet. I want them to be good with phones, to be honest. Like, and even just like the fine motor skills with like being able to navigate, like that type of learning, I do think is important. And actually, we do apps. We do learning apps. There's I've got Luna on this one, Brilliant, I think it's called, and it's all these different like science and like IQ type stuff. So I definitely think that learn I believe in tech enabled education, but certainly not like social media where they're all just like, you know, all of the insecurities of being in middle school like are just amplified, and that's
Yeah,
just like,
exactly.
yeah.
Any AI learning stuff that works for your kids, you got to shoot me the link to it or tell me the name of it so I can try it.
Oh yeah, I mean, just I'll like supervised. I'll let them like do voice chat with it. You
Yeah.
know,
I had
the
a buddy of mine, his name's Andrew Wilkinson. He owns a really big kind of tech
Oh,
company.
Tiny.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I've talked to them before. I haven't talked to Andrew, but I've talked to his team before. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a good dude. But he said to me that he'll do like the voice mode and he'll say, I'm going to put you on I'm going to put my, whatever. I can't remember the age. I'm going to put my 8-year-old son on here. Like, please make sure all responses are appropriate for an age. Not just that it would say something inappropriate, but so when it explains something, it explains like to an 8-year-old.
Yeah.
And he said that when his son will talk with it, it's very, it's just like so interesting the questions they ask. So I've done that once or twice with my kids, which has been hilarious.
Yeah. Yeah, it's cool. I mean, the voice mode on AI is amazing. I mean, on it's for like legal stuff. Like, I'll just talk to AI for hours about understanding like legal questions I have for business, and
Yeah, sure.
just it's super helpful. So, but what's interesting though is I was trying to really my 5-year-old with the learning to read. I was really thinking that like the phone and like with some different like learning apps for reading was going to be helpful, but to be honest, like it clicked so much harder for her with the physical book and writing. Like, it's not even funny how much harder it clicked.
Yeah.
So there's definitely there's like a glaze that you're just not locked in the same way with the phone as you are with a real book or, a pen and paper. It's a very different way that your brain processes the information. So I definitely think that starting with the physical and moving to digital later is better.
I try to end each episode by asking our guests to brag about their family. So the floor is yours.
So my wife, she is out of nowhere started being able to create like pretty photorealistic drawings of people, and it's just like, what, how are you doing that? Like I don't like, because photorealistic drawing is like a next level skill. It's crazy. And so she's just like out of nowhere, she's just like so talented. She's also an incredible singer, but she's so like reserved about it. So she's just like this like insane artist. And so I'm trying to get her to share more of it. Then my oldest, literally, there is nothing under an A on her report card for two quarters in a row, and I'm just like, I mean, I was like a B, I was like a straight B student. Like, I'd get an A once in a while, but like I was, I probably could have gotten A's if I really wanted to, but I guess I just didn't want to. And she's just like, there's nothing under an A. They're telling her that she's in sixth grade. They're telling her that she's like at high school level, like everything. So she's just like, she's an absolute animal, and just like, burns through books, and she's just super smart. She's like starring in the play, doing Sound of Music. It's so funny. So she's just such a killer. My 5-year-old is, just learning to read so fast, and it's been so beautiful to watch, and she's so she's a great artist too. That's really exciting. And then my youngest is he's just a savage. He's just got this like deep zest for everything. Every day I wake up and it's like he is just the one helping me want to get after it. He makes me remember, to not get into the, depression. It's just like having kids in a family are just, the best antidepressant.
Now on to our final word segment, where we ask our guests a few rapid fire questions. What is the biggest adversity you've faced?
I'm kind of in the midst of it right now. We're really reevaluating. We raised. We've been fortunate enough to do some big funding rounds, and just like getting the business in shape, really, from like a fundamentals perspective. Like it's really like one of the most challenging things I've ever gone through, and we're really finally breeding some results, and it's been like a totally new frame of mind. I think the whole market is shifting in terms of like la la land VC stuff versus just like fundamental business. And so that's been, it's been a really intense couple years, but I think shifting into that mindset has been tough, but it's great.
What was the happiest moment in your life?
Probably, we did home births for my kids, and I actually delivered my son because the midwife was on the road, and that she wasn't at the house yet, and it was just like happening. And
you're a braver man than me.
So I just like, I was there. I mean, my wife did most of the work, but like at that moment when like I won't go into too many graphic detail, but for a second I was like freaking out and like really scared because something that was happening. And then we just like made it through it. Another quick one I could share. I don't know best moment, but just like wild moments. My buddy was choking on an almond, and he was going down, and I did the Heimlich, and it saved him. And I've definitely a top moment. And it's just like we have this funny thing now where like I just get to give him shit that I saved his life, and so
Is
like
that
he
is
owes me
that the
so hard.
one? Is that the one that bought you a $50,000 Bitcoin steak
No,
sandwich?
different. They know each other.
So you owe one and one owes you.
Yeah.
What are you most excited about?
A more sovereign, a more transparent world. I'm really excited about understanding what the hell is going on in the world, and like what's the nature of reality. I want to know what is actually going on in this world. Like, what is this existence that we're in? And not to get tinfoil hat, but like, I think that there's something going on with. I think we're going to get some information from the government about the UFOs, and I'm excited about that. I think it's a really it's a real issue, and so I feel like that's coming. But and so this sort of merging of like, I'm excited for just like growing with my family and like building our lives together. But then on the more like high level existential stuff, I'm excited for just like where things go. Like, who knows? I mean, maybe they're real, maybe they're not. But regardless, it's either the craziest like public mass psychological manipulation and it's like some government psyop, or it's like we're not alone. Either of those scenarios are just like insane. So I'm here for it.
Next one. What advice would you give your younger self?
I probably would have started exercising more heavily when when I was younger. I've definitely realized that fitness, like doing like push-ups and squats a lot, like it seems like a small thing, but from like a mental clarity and mental health perspective, I think that for years it's not like I was in bad shape. I think I could have been a lot more effective if and I was an athlete in high school and everything, but like after that I just never really wanted to work out, and so that has really changed my life like in the last 5 years.
Do you have any book recommendations for us or for the listeners?
Dharma Bums. Um, there is I would say Tom Robbins just comes to mind as like just an incredible social commentator, but it's fiction mostly. And then I would say there's an Orwell anthology called Truth, which I highly recommend. It really gives you like some of his best like tight little essays and passages from all of his top stuff.
The name of our podcast is Nothing Left Unsaid. Do you have anything you want to say?
I'm super grateful for you guys, thinking of me and including me. This has been easily one of the most unique shows I've ever been on. I really am digging this like nonverbal communication I'm getting from Tim. I mean, it's just like blowing my mind, to be honest.
Yeah.
And so I've really enjoyed it. I'd love to keep collaborating with you guys, and thanks for being so curious about what I'm up to, and I really look forward to continuing on.
Yeah. Before we let you go, too, I got to ask you one more question. The real last question. At the end of every podcast, I ask any guest that we have. I say, "Who are a couple of people you know personally that you think that we should try to get on the podcast next?"
Let's see. My buddy Ian Crossland, who is he's a co-host on. So he was one of the co-founders of Minds, actually, and he is a co-host on Timcast. Are you familiar with that
Yeah.
show?
Yeah.
He's the guy
Yeah.
with the long hair.
Okay.
So Ian, I could definitely hook you up with him. He is he's such a creative, badass, awesome guy, and very silly. and very fun, and very curious and nuanced. I love him. Let's see. Also, I would say Coleman Hughes is really cool. He spoke at one of our events. He's like a heterodox thinker. And Daryl, dude, I got to get you Daryl.
Yeah, Daryl would be awesome.
Oh yeah, you got to have Daryl. I can definitely link you up with Daryl. Daryl and Coleman are kind of kindred spirits. I'm trying to, you know, who else would be cool? Who I don't know, but is the guy who's been kind of the Neuralink the Neuralink. I forget his name. He's like the guy who's been like very public. One of the first human.
The first guy, yeah.
The first guy. He would be really cool to get. And let me think. Who do you want? Who's your like? What's your focus? Like who's your ideal? Maybe I can help.
Yeah, that's a good question. So one of the things that was important to us is, so my dad's background is he was a first round NFL draft pick. He'd written New York Times best-selling books for kids. He was on TV. He's on, and then obviously, you know, ALS, and raised a lot of money and all that for ALS, and a big voice for it. So one of the things we were afraid of with the podcast is we didn't want to be like, oh, that's the ALS podcast, or oh, that's just like a football podcast, or it's just author. So we've been very intentional at getting like all kinds of random people. So Dad, who would your ideal guest be?
I think that's a good strategy, to be honest.
Yeah. Anybody that has like a good story it's always fun to talk to. There's the people that, you know, like an Elon Musk, somebody like that is so
you know
cool.
Actually this podcast brought me to tears the other day. I'm admitting that. You know Anthony Pompliano?
Yeah.
So I've been on his show before, but he had Howard Lutnick on his show.
Howard Lutnick that's our most downloaded episode.
Oh, you had Howard.
Yeah.
Dude, I cried during hearing his story on Pomp on 9/11.
Yeah.
That was insane. I mean, I have my level of respect for him just when I'm so interested in him. I'm definitely going to listen to that episode as soon as maybe later tonight. I mean, God damn, that guy's story is so good. It gets me so fired up for like business, like bringing the business back from that point after 9/11 and what he did, and now what he's doing with the sovereign wealth fund. It's just like, what a badass. That's so cool. That's awesome.
So it's like I tipped you off beforehand to bring it up. It's such a perfect plug. Well, nice. Bill, thanks so much for coming on. It was really cool talking to you. I honestly can say I learned a lot, and we'll have to. I'm going to shoot you a message about collaborative minds.
Thank you, Bill. We appreciate your time. This conversation was extremely illuminating. May God continue to bless you and your family.
You too, brother. Thank you so much.
Today's episode is brought to you by the ALS Investment Fund, a specialized biotech venture capital investment firm focused on neurodegenerative diseases, particularly ALS. They manage a large and diversified worldwide portfolio of ALS-related companies, collaborating with a global network of scientists, clinicians, foundations, and patient advocates to accelerate therapeutic development, investing for a world without ALS. Discover more about their mission and impact at alsinvestmentfund.com. If you enjoyed today's episode, consider supporting the podcast for free by subscribing on your favorite podcast platform, leaving a review, and sharing it with your friends. Your support means the world to us. This episode of Nothing Left Unsaid is brought to you by 11 Labs. Their groundbreaking technology makes a huge difference, and we're grateful for their support. To learn more, visit 11labs.io. A substantial portion of our sponsorship proceeds go to tackleals.com, funding cutting-edge ALS research. If you'd like to join the fight and contribute, visit tackleals.com. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time on Nothing Left Unsaid.